Blessings. Good evening from Bodhipala Monastery. Our format tonight is a little different because I'm visiting this weekend. So the first part of the program is silent meditation, but I'll give you some guidance to begin with. So please find a comfortable way to sit. And bring your attention inwards to your own body as you're sitting right here, right now. And this is the time to let go of all your concerns, worries, business outside, what you're going to do tomorrow, what happened yesterday. You can let it all go now and try to center your awareness on the present moment by bringing your attention to the feeling of the in and out breath. So if you're not familiar with that, then pick it up at the tip of your nostrils by taking a few deep breaths. And feel the air rushing in as you breathe in. You draw air in at the tip of your nostrils into your nose. And as your lungs deflate and your abdomen falls back, note the feeling of the out breath. And at any time in the meditation when you become distracted with your thoughts or you're sleepy, you can re-establish awareness by taking a few deep breaths. Inhale deeply, exhale deeply. And this will wake you up or it'll pull you back from whatever you're thinking about. And the aim is to stay with the breathing. Even if thoughts are coming up, notice them, but let them go. Try not to get caught up into the issues and the details of every thought, every train of thought. If you hear sounds, you don't have to concern yourself if there's no problem or danger. It's just a sound coming to your ear. You might acknowledge it and let go. If you have feelings in your body, painful feelings in your legs or around the body, or itches, or different sensations come up, just note them and then let go as best you can, using the breath as your anchor. By putting attention on your breath, this allows you to let go. You give more importance to the breath than everything else. So following the in and out breath, you pick one point. You don't have to try and get rid of all the other distractions. You simply don't give them any importance. Sounds, sensations and feelings, thoughts, memories, images. You may not be able to stop them arising into your consciousness, but you don't have to give them a lot of importance, so then they fade away. But of course, when you lose your mindfulness, you're no longer with the breath, you've forgotten the breath, then you will give importance to every thought and you'll start getting lost in imagination, trains of thought, until at some point you realize you've lost your awareness. So like the monkey or the baby cow that you tether to the post, your mind will run around. But the rope that tethers them to the post is your strength of mindfulness. When you realize that you're no longer with the breath, that's when you bring your mind back to the breath. That's like the monkey or the calf getting to the end of its rope and can't go any further, so it has to come back. After a while, it gets tired of running away and hitting the end of the rope each time. So in the end, they stop running. Your mind will stop getting lost into the trains of thought and will come back to the breath the more you practice, until it stays with the breath. And then the meditation becomes quite pleasant, because you're knowing the breath more than you know other things. And the breath is very peaceful, relaxing in its nature. It's very neutral, doesn't stir you up. So it tends to calm your mind, and both body and mind starts to relax as your mind centers on the breath. And you may experience, at least for short periods or sometimes longer periods, all your mental energy gathering together in one place, at the tip of the nostrils or at the chest. As your mental energy gathers in one place, you can feel it, you can know it. It's cool. The mind is centered, it's settled, it's undistracted. And then you're just with the breath, and the breath becomes more refined. You might slow down a bit, the rhythm, the movement of the in and out breath slows down, becomes more refined. But your job is just to stay aware of the breath at one point. And the coolness of the breath will help, because it's pleasant, easy to stay with. And you'll be more tired of letting your mind wander around with all the thoughts. So you're now getting to know your own mind because it's in one place. If you really keep going sincerely, maintaining your mindfulness with the breathing, not letting your mind wander too far, the one-pointedness will come up, and with that you get some rapture, contentment, happiness. The agitation, the anxiety will drop away. Different emotions will become less powerful, and your mind will become much more cool and still. And then it's much easier to keep it in one place. But you always have to be on guard, because your mind loves to throw up distraction. Even doubts about the meditation. What should I do next? Should I contemplate? Should I stay with the breath? Or if the breath becomes very refined, you may have the thought, where is the breath? Am I still breathing? Some people even become afraid. They think, I'm not breathing anymore. I can't feel my body anymore. What's going to happen? Some people become afraid they might float away. Some people think they might die. But these are just different thoughts, doubts the mind creates. Your job is to stick with your practice of mindfulness of breathing. You can know the doubt or the fear, but then let it go, until your mind just settles in one place and it's not too bothered by anything. You may even reach the point where the breath seems to stop moving in and out, and it's just still. The mind is still, the breath is still. You may even note the mind is very bright, like somebody's turned a bright light on inside your mind. But again, you don't have to doubt or wonder what is this bright light, or think about the light, or hold on to that light. You just stay with the breath, or at least where the breath seemed to stop moving and became still. Just stay there. Some people experience rapture. Sometimes it feels like waves of energy going up and down the body. Feels like your body is moving, swaying sometimes. Get goosebumps. You may feel you have tears forming in your eyes, even rolling down your cheeks. The mind and body can feel so light that you don't feel any sensations in the body anymore. It's almost like you're just floating in midair. These are all examples of piti or rapture. And they're both physical and mental. But you don't need to doubt. You just watch and observe, and you'll see most of the rapture comes and goes in waves, and sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's very weak, sometimes it'll disappear. You don't need to think too much about it. You just observe. And keep letting go of all the distractions. As your mindfulness improves, your ability to concentrate and stick with the breath will improve. And this is something very useful for us because it will help us to understand the Dhamma better. But for now, I'll stop talking and we can carry on hearing, meditating until we hear the sound of the bell, the end of the session. Blessings. Welcome again to our evening program, Zoom session. Tonight's program is a little bit longer than usual. So just finished our first meditation. Next we'll have some evening chanting. And then after that I'll give some teaching. So if you have chanting books, you can turn to page 17.
17.
17, volume 1, and we'll continue with evening chanting.
Bow. Okay. Yo so bhagava arahang samma sambuddho sawakkato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato sawaka sangho Dhammayang bhagavantang sadhammang sasangkang ime hi sakare hi yatarahang aropite hi abhipuchayama sadhuno pantem bhagava sucira pariniputopi Pachima Chanatanu Kampa Manasa Ime Sakare Tukata Panakara Puti Patikam Hatu Amarang Vikaratang Hitaya Sukaya Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Okay, can sit up here. Tonight being the one prat, we will do some Parita chanting, auspicious Parita chanting. That can be found on page 100 of the volume 2 chanting book. Paritavanametang samita patanta Avikita cita paritang pananto Sake kame charupe Kirisi karatate chantalike vimane De perate chakame taruvanakahane ke havatum hikete Pumachayanto Deva Charatala Visameya Kakanta Panaka Te Tanta Santi Keyang Muniwara Vachanang Satavo Me Sunanto ธัมมสวนาคาโลหยัมปตันตาธัมมสวนาคาโลหยัมปตันตาธัมมสวนาคาโลอายัมปตันตานะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังสารนังคัจฉามิธัมมังสารนังคัจฉามิสังฆังสารนังคัจฉามิดุติยามปิพุทธังสารนังคัจฉามิดุติยามปิธัมมังสารนังคัจฉามิดุติยามปิสังฆังสารนังคัจฉามิตติยามปิพุทธังสารนังกัจฉามิตติยามปิธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิตติยามปิสังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิโยจักขุมาโมหะมัลลาปะกะโตสัมมังวะพุทโธสุขโตวิโมทโตมาราสะปะสะวิมิโมชยันโตปาเปสิเขมังชนะทังวินัยยังพุทธังวรันตังศิรสานามามิโลกัสสะกันจวินัยกันอันเทจะสาเตจยสิติโหตุสัพพันตรายาชาปินาสเมนตุตัมโหตโชโยวิยตัสสะสัตตุตาสิสิโลกาสวิสุทธิมากังนิหานิโกตัมมัตราสตาริสัตตาวะโหสันติกโรสุชินโนตัมมังวรันตังศิราสานามามิโมหะปัตตาลังอุปสันตตาหังคันเทชะสะเอเตสิโหตุสัพพันธรายาชาปินาสเมตุสัตตมะเสนาสุขทานุโกโยโลกาสปะปุปะกิเลสเจตาสันโทสยังสันทินิโยจะโกจะสวากาตตามังวิติทังกโรติสังฆังวรันตังศิราสานามามิพุทธานุพุทธังสัมมาสีลทิติขันเทจัสสะเทชยสิติโหตุสัพพันตรายาจาวินาสเมนตุนะโมอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะมะเหสิโนนะโมพุทธมัตตะมาสสวากาตเสวะเทียนตินะนะโมมหาสังฆาสาปิวิสุทธเสียละเทียตินะโมโหมาตยาระตาสรตนาตยาสัสสะทุขังนะโมโหมาคาทิตาสัตสวัตุตยาสัพพินะโมคาราปะปะเวนะวิคาชันตุปาตวะนะโมคารานุภาเวนะสุมาติโหตุสัพพะตานะโมคาราสะเทเจนะวิติมมิโหมิ เตชะวะเสวนาจะปัลลานังปันติทานันจะเสวนาปุชะจะปุชานิยานังเหตามังกลมุตตมังปฏิรูปฏิสวาโสจะปุเปจะกตปุญญาตาหาตสัมมาปณิดิจาเหตามังกลมุตตมังปาหุสัจจันจะสีปัญจวินยโยจะสุสีกิโตสุจาสิทาจายาวาจาเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังมาตาปิตุหุปหาตานังพุทธตาราสสังฆโหหานาคุลาชกัมมันตาเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังทานันชะตัมมะจริยาจัญญาตกานันชะสังฆโหหนาวะจานิคามานิเหตัมมังกลมุตตมังหารติวิรติปาปะมาจาปานาจาสัญญโมหาปมาโตชะตัมเมสุเพตัมมังกลมุตตมังการะโภจานิวาโตจะสันตุทิจักตัญยุตากาเลนะธัมมาสวนังเฮตัมมังกลมุตตมังคันธิจะโสวจาสตาสมนานันชตาสนะกาเลนะธัมมาสกาจาเหตัมมังกลมุตตมังทัพโพจะพระมัจฉริยังจาริยสัจจานาตาสนังนิพพานาสัจจกิริยาจะเหตัมมังกลมุตตมังตาสัลโลกธรรมเมหิจิตังยาสนคัมปฏิหาโสขังวิราจังเขมังเฮตัมมังกลมุตตมังเอตาติสานิกัตวานาสาปาตมปราจิตาสาปาตโสติงกาฉันติตันเตสัมมังกลมุตตมันติเมตัญชสาปโลกาสมิงมานะสัมปาวะเยหะปริมาณังหุตังหะโตชะติริยังชะหะสัมปะตังหะเวรังอะสมะทังทิตัญชะรังนิโนวาตยาโนวายาวทาสวิกตามิโตหิตังสติงหะทิตยะปามะเมตาวิหารังหิตามาหุติตินชานุปกัมมสีลวัตตาสเนนะสัมปันโนกัมเมสุวินัยเกตังนาหิชาตุกาปัสยะปุณเรติติโปจังโกสัตติสังกาโตธัมมานังวิจัยโยตตาวิริยปิติปัสสะติโปจังคาจัตตาปริสมาตุเพกะโปจังคาสาติสัพพทาสินามุนีนาสามัทากาตาปาวิทาปะหุลิกตาสัมปายันติกาปิญญายานิพพานายาชาโพธิยาเหเทนะสัจวาเชนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพดาเหกัสมิงสมัยเยนะโตโอกาลานัญชะกาสะพังกิลานิดุกิเทติสาวาปุชังเกสัตตติสหิเตจตังหะปินันติตาวาโรกามุชิงสุทังคะเนหิเตนะสัจจวาเจนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพดาเหก กดาธัมมราชาปิกิลันเยนาปิปิลิโตชนดาเทเรนะทันเยวะปนา วานาสาตารังสามมุทิตวาชหาปาดาธัมหาวุธาสิทานาโสเอเทนะสัจจวาเจนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพะตาปะหินาเตจาปาตาทินานัมปิมาเหสินังมาคาหัตถกิเลสาวะปาตานุปาติธัมมะทังเอเทนะสัจจวาเจนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพะดาอาติอุนหิสาภิจโยธรรมโมโลกิหานุตตโรสัพพสัตตหิตาทายทันตวังคันหายิเกวะเทปริวาเจราชทานเทหามานุเสหิปาวะเกปยาเกนาเกวิเศปุเทกาลมารณีนาวาสาปัสมามารณามุตุทาเปตวาคาลมาริทังทาเสวาหานุภาเวนะโหตุเทโวสุขิสัตตสุตสีลังสมาทายธรรมังสุจริตังจริตาเสวาหานุภาเวนะโหตุเทโวสุขิสัตตาลิกิตังจิตตังภูชังตารนังวาชนังคารุงภาริสังเทสนังสุตวัตปวันตทิติยันตุนิเมตังหวามังกาลัญชโยชามนาปุสะกุณาสสะตุปาปากะโหตุสุปินังหะขันธังพุทธานุภาเวนะวินาสมินตุยันตุนิเมตังหวามังกาลัญมานาปุสะกุณาสสะตุปาปากะโหตุสุปินังหะขันธังธัมมานุภาเวนะวินาสมินตุยันตุนิเมตังหวามังกาลโยชามนาปุสะกุณาสสะตุปาปากะโหตุสุปินังหะขันธังสังฆานุภาเวนะตุตุกขปาตาชนิตุกขปยาปาตาชนิปยาโสกปาตาชนิโสกหนตุสาเปปิปานิโนเฮทาวตาจหัมเหหิสัมปตะปุญญาสัมปดังสาเปเทวานุโมตันตุสัพพสัมปติสิทธิยาตานังตาตันตุสัตายาสีลังราคันตุสัพพดาปาวนาปิรากาหนตุกาจันตุเทวตากตาสัพเพพุทธาปะลาปะตาปะเจกานัญจยังปะลังหรหันทานัญจเทเจนราคังปันตามิสาปะโสบาหุมสหาสมปินิมิทาสาวุตันปริเมกาลังอุทิตะโกรสเสนามารังทานาทิตัมมวิตินาจิตวามุนินโตทันเตจะสหภาวตุเตชยมังกาลานิมาราธิริปิโยจิตาสาปราติงโกรังปนาลาวกนาคามตาตยากังขันติสุตันตวิธินาจิตวามุนินโตทันเตจะสหภาวตุเตชยมังกาลานิ กิริงกัจจวรังหาติยังทปุตังตราวากิชากรรมสนิวสุตารุนันตังเมตังบุเสกวิตินาชิตวามนินโตตันเทชะสาภวตุเตชยมังกลานิหุกิตกากรรมติหาทัสตารุนันตังเมวันติโยชนะปัตตังกุลิมาลวันตังอิติปิสังคตมโนชิตวามุนินโตตันเตชะสหภวตุเตชยมังกลานิกาตวานากาตมุตรังหิวกาปินิยาชินชายดุชาวจนะจนากายมาเจสันเตนะโสมาวิตินาชิตวามุนินโตทันเตชะสหภวตุเตชยมังกลานิสัจจังวิหายมติสัจจกวาตะกิตุมมาตาปิโรปิตมนังหติหันตปุตตะปัญญาปฏิปัจจาริโตจิตวามนินโตตันเตชะสหภวตุเตชยมังกลานินันโตปนันตปุจจกังวิปุตังมหิติมปุเตนะเทระปุจจเกนะตัมมาปยันโตหิตุปเดสวิตินาจิตวามนินโตตันเตชะสหภวตุเตชยมังกลานิทุกาหติติปุจจเกนะสุตตหะตังพระมังวิสุทธิจุติมิทิภคาหิทานังญาณกเตนะวิติหาชิตวามุนินโตตันเตชะสหภวตุเตชยมังกลานิเหตาปิพุตตชยมังกลาหัตกาตาโยวาชโนทินาทิเนสารเทมตันติหิตวานาเนกวิปิตานิจุปัตวานิโมขังสุขังอดิกเมยนาโรสปัญโยมหาการุณิโกนาโทหิตายาสัพพานินางปุเรตวะปารมิสัพพะโตสัมพุติมุตตมะเอเทนะสัจจวาเจนะโหตุเตชยมังกลังชยันโตโพธิยามุเลสักยานันนันติวาตโนเอวังตวังวิจัยโยโหหิจยาสุชยมังกะเลหะปาราจิตปาลังเกสิเสปตวิโปกะเรหะปิเสเกสาปะปุตตานังหากาปะโตปะโมตติสุนาคาตังสุมังกลังสุปปาตังสุหุติตังสุขโนสุมุตโตสุเยตังพระมชาริสุปตากินังกายกรรมังวาจากรรมังปตากินังปตากินังมโนกรรมังปณิทิเตปตากินาปตากินานิกตวานลปันตเตปาตาคิเนปวัตตุสัพพมังคลังราคันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนัสตาสุติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังราคันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธรรมานุภาเวนัสตาสุติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังราคันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนัสตาโสทิภวันตุเต page 31 of volume 1. ขันธมยังอุติสนาทิฐานาคาทายโยปนามาเสอิมินาปุญญาคามินาหุปัจจายาคุณธาราอาจาริยุปการาชามาทาพิทาชัญญาตาคาสุริโยชันติมาราชาคุณาวันตานาราปิชาพระมามาราชาหินตาชาโลกาภาลาชาเทวทายาโมมิตามนุสาชามาชาตาวิริกาปิชาสัพเพสัตตาสุขิหนตุปุญญานิปักขตานิเมสุขังชาติวิทังเทนตุขีปังปะเปตะโวมาทังหิมินาปุญญากามินาหิมินาหุติเสนาชากิปะหังสุลาเปเชวาทานุปาดานาเจตนังเยสันตานิมินาดัมมายาวานิปานะโทมะมังนาสันตุสัพพะทาเยวายาทาชะโตปะเวปะเวอุจุจิตังสติปัญญาสาลิโกวิริยังอินามาราลาพันตุโลกาสังฆาทัญจาวิริเหสุเมบุตตาติปาวโรนาโทธัมโมนาโทวรุตโมนาโทภะเจกาพุทโธชาสังโฆนาโทตโรมะมังเตโสธามานุภาเวนะมาโรคาสังลาปันตุมาตาสาปุญญานุภาเวนะมาโรคาสังลาปันตุมา
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings from Bodhipala Monastery. I hope you can hear me. Here. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Okay, good. So, somebody today asked, why are we here in this place? Why did we build a monastery in this place? Well, since the time of the Buddha, particularly Buddhist monks and nuns have sought out quiet places to practice meditation. So quiet places means forests, countryside, mountains, wherever there are not urban areas, so outside the villages and towns and cities of the world. There's plenty of forests and countryside around. So it just makes sense if you're devoting your whole life to training your mind. which is what the life of a monastic is all about. Then you look for some places that are conducive for that training, meaning fairly quiet and secluded, not too many distractions, not too many things happening, because this helps. It's not an absolute guarantee that your mind will settle down and become peaceful, or that you'll develop the kind of qualities that you need to develop meditation, but it's a good starting point. What we call Gaya Viveka in Buddhism, getting some physical seclusion. For lay people, you can also gain that following the Sangha out to these places, practicing with them maybe. Or even if you're living in an urban area, a city, your secluded place is perhaps your room or the corner of your room in your house, in your home. You just have to make the best of what opportunities you have. But for a monastery, a place where Sangha go seek out a quiet place, and you tend to go further afield. So we've come to this place, it's called Mount Pleasant. It's a very apt name because the place is very pleasant, peaceful, beautiful, you might say, beautiful in the way of nature, and conducive to the practice. They have very, what would the word be, impressive sunrises here. The hills, these hills around us are called the Adelaide Hills, and they're not that high, they're not low either, but they're not high, they're not like, it's not a mountain range as such, it's hills, rolling hills. And so when the sun comes up, kind of pokes its head up from behind the hills in the morning, and you get a good reminder of something the Buddha said once. He said the arising of right view, samadhi, in the mind of a person, a practitioner, is like the sun arising in the morning. And you see that very clearly here because there's very few clouds in the sky. It doesn't rain very much here. So the skies tend to be clear. And so you see the sunrise, you see the sort of yellow, blurry light first, and then you actually see the disk of the sun come up from behind the hill and slowly move up into the sky. And you see the sort of sheet of light coming from the sun gradually spreading across the hills, the valleys, until the whole sky is lit up. And the Buddha compared this to the arising of right view, samadhi, based on listening to the Dhamma, associating with Kalyana Mitta, fellow practitioners who understand the way of practice, noble ones, listening to the Dhamma of noble ones and respecting that. All of these are factors that help us to bring our views, our thoughts, beliefs in line with the Buddhist teachings. And that makes a great change in our mind. And that change is as powerful as like the sun rising in the morning. The sky was previously dark, the night sky. But then the sun arises and it completely changes to the daytime sky, which is full of light. So here it always reminds me of that when I see the sunrise in the east. It's like the arising of right view when you understand a point of Dhamma that maybe before you didn't understand, or you hear a teaching or think of a teaching that even if you've already understood or heard before, perhaps you forgot, or it's gone to the back of your mind. So then when it pops up into your mind, it kind of brightens you. Someone was saying today that the biggest form of mental and most common form of mental illness in Australia is depression. Anxiety is a sort of close second, but depression is probably the most widespread kind of mental illness and unhappiness that humans in Australia are experiencing. And many people have said how when they hear the Dhamma or they learn to meditate and improve mindfulness, their mindfulness, learn to turn their attention inwards and then also start reflecting on sila, their speech, their actions, from a place of right view, understanding about good karma, bad karma. Then this is like a big change. It's like the light breaking through the darkness of their depression. Of course, there's depression. Sometimes it's a very serious illness, physical and mental. Sometimes it's more temporary, and probably everyone experiences some depression sometimes. But when you bring the Dhamma to bear on, a mood of negativity, depression, unhappiness, often it can help to bring in some light into the mind. And so, reflecting or reminding yourself of the sunrise can point you in the right direction. You've got to find the Dhamma that will help you get through your mood if you're feeling depressed. And so many different Dhammas and teachings and reflections can help with that. The one very common one that the Buddha encouraged and many of our teachers encourage is just to reflect on and remind yourself of wholesome actions you've done in the past, the good karma you've made, things you've done in the way of dana, say like charity, helping others, supporting others who maybe have been in more need than you, or just doing things, favors, or giving help, or words of advice, or support to other people. Remembering that tends to brighten the mind, makes you feel better, gives a bit more meaning to your life. Or sometimes remembering things that other people have done for us, whether it's parents, siblings, family members, or friends, or sometimes work colleagues, or occasionally even strangers. Remembering acts of kindness, support, help that we've received sometimes over long periods of time. Say like if you remember teachers at school who may have helped you, obviously your parents helped you over again. Normally speaking, that would be the case. Remembering the help you've received from others, again, brings light. It's like sheds light into the mind, brightens the mind, because you're now focusing on something more positive, recognizing that you have both maybe made good karma and also received the fruits of your previous good karma. And these are not small things, because they brighten the mind when we think like that. This is something you can do in meditation, but you can also do in any activity or any time of day or night to brighten the mind. And maybe it should also be part of our practice, recollecting the good we've done, and consciously, with awareness, with mindfulness perhaps, to bring up a wholesome state or a better state of mind, and to counter the tendency towards negativity, depression, only seeing what's wrong with ourselves, our life, the world, and so on. So just seeing a sunrise, if you've thought about this before, you've heard that teaching, maybe just seeing the sunrise already does that to you. It reminds you to focus your mind back on something wholesome. Of course, if you meditate regularly, then you can do it in that way. Just go to your meditation objects. So if you regularly recollect the Buddha, recite Buddha, or chant Iti Piso, recollect the qualities of the Buddha, or in any way you recollect the Buddha. Or if you regularly practice mindfulness of breathing, or you recollect the theme of death, Marananusati, or any of the other meditation objects that people use, that will brighten your mind, or tend to brighten your mind, when you really turn genuinely or sincerely turn to your meditation object. And not just during a meditation period, but at any time in your day. You can do this, if only for a few moments. It's like a little bit of brightness, a glimpse of that early morning sun comes into your mind. Then you're suddenly more aware, you're paying more attention to yourself, what you're thinking, how you're feeling. And if you have been caught into some negativity, doom and gloom, then it can maybe part the clouds of your doom and gloom at that moment. And sometimes it can be quite profound. You just turn your mind to think or focus on your meditation object, and the suffering, the unhappiness you were experiencing before just drops away quite quickly. Maybe not always. Sometimes you have to work very hard at it, of course. But sometimes, just in a few moments, your whole mood can change. Sometimes it's prompted from external things, so like listening to the Dhamma, perhaps chanting, going to a place like a monastery that is quiet and maybe has certain things that help to remind you of the Buddha and his teachings, so like a Buddhist statue or a chedi or some religious object, perhaps. There's many ways it can, our attention can be turned back to a meditation object or to the Dhamma. So also that includes, lifestyle, how we spend our time. If you are depressed, often we are our own worst enemies. So we do things that actually make it worse or indulge our depression. So we don't get out of bed very much, unfortunately. And that's one of the symptoms, isn't it? When you're feeling really down, you don't even want to get up in the morning. Or we just sit in our chair, kind of gloomy, not doing much. Or we sometimes do things that are self-destructive, so like drinking, drugs, or like someone today was talking about their sister who's gambling, kind of addicted to gambling. Often when you're depressed, you actually do the very worst thing, and it only makes it worse. It's like indulging your mood and then doing something unskillful that just takes you downhill. So that's why the practice of meditation, listening to the Dhamma and meditating can be so valuable. But it takes some effort, some practice. It's something that you may have to commit to or remind yourself to keep doing. And people often admit to me when I ask them, are you keeping up your meditation practice? And they say, haven't done it for a while. I was meaning to. It's a good idea. I agree it's a good idea. But they always say the hardest part of meditation is just getting started. But if you have done it before and you're familiar with a meditation object, well, really you can turn to that object anytime that you remind yourself to do that. And you don't even have to be sitting cross-legged on the floor. You can be in a car or walking along the street or anything. So this is a big part of our practice, reminding ourselves of the power of turning our attention inwards, the power of mindfulness, and the insight, the understanding that can arise from that. And it can sometimes be very quick and very, very painless. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of effort, but just enough effort to turn your attention inwards to a meditation object and maybe move away from a train of thought or a particular emotion that you were experiencing. Bring your mind back to the present moment and see that emotion or that train of thought in a more objective way and recognize, oh, it's just thinking, or it's just a feeling. Which is what mindfulness does. When you're more mindful, you're paying attention to your body, your mind, how you feel, what's going on. Instead of taking it all to be self, we say identifying with it as self, me, myself, these now become objects of mindfulness. And you can be mindful of thinking, mindful of feelings, pleasant and painful, mindful of your body, what's going on. And that already removes some of the pain or the sting, and particularly if you are suffering, it already removes some of the worst part of it, because you're now seeing suffering as suffering. The first noble truth, dukkha, seeing or knowing dukkha as dukkha. You need to be mindful to do that. You need to pay attention. And you need to practice. You need to do it often. And this practice is open to anyone, man, woman, young, old, whoever, wherever. But you do have to engage. You have to commit. You have to make some effort. And also, as you practice, or you have the wish to practice, you probably notice aspects of your lifestyle which support that. So like coming to a quiet place is always very supportive of that, very conducive. But also other aspects of our lifestyle you'll notice are quite obstructive, get in the way or make things harder, don't they? Hard to be mindful when you're very, very busy, to the point where you're maybe over busy, overworked, overtired, got too much on your plate, too many responsibilities. We always have a certain choice in our life, and we have some flexibility, some room for maneuver, or room for movement and choice. But sometimes we just let things slide, so we take on too much, or get too busy, or get too worn out. Then of course it is hard to be mindful, or to even stop for 1 minute, to pause your day for 1 minute. Seems like a big thing to do. So sometimes we have to consciously look at our life and say, is my life really conducive to developing more peace, more understanding of the Dhamma? Or am I just throwing up endless obstacles to the Dhamma? Of course, some things we can't control, and some things there's not much you can do about. Some of our duties and responsibilities in families or workplaces and life there's not much we can do about. We just have to be patient and live with that. But some of the choices we make only make life harder, don't they? How we spend our time, and whether it's a choice between surfing the net, watching something on a screen, or turning your attention to watch the in and out breath. Well, quite often the technology or the entertainment or the distraction will win. And that's where you have to have some discipline. Like my teacher Ajahn Kalyano used to say, part of the role of sila is to get you to be able to be mindful of your in and out breath. Often sila is seen as just a sort of a simple moral code that you have to take on and practice, but sila is practice for developing meditation, both mindfulness, samadhi, and insight. It's like guiding your actions and your speech towards that end, towards the end of being mindful of a meditation object. And if you use that way of thinking, sometimes you don't actually have to remember your precepts, as rules or guidelines that you've taken on. It's more like you start observing different activities and ways of behavior, and you realize there are some things that just don't support being mindful. Obvious one might be something like playing a video game. People often try and fool themselves and say, "Oh, I play a video game. I'm very mindful of the movements. I'm training my samadhi to win the points in whatever way. Maybe as you kill your way through the points and gain more points." But really, they're just kind of fooling themselves, aren't they? It's something you absorb into in a way of just, you're no longer mindful. You're just indulging in the excitement, the stimulation, whatever. It's just one example. Music could be another one. So entertainments, sensual stimulation often is just a distraction, even though we sometimes say, "Oh, it helps me relax." Well, there may be some truth to that in a short-term way, but really it's a kind of indulgence. So if you're interested to develop meditation, sometimes you have to reduce some of these activities. Play a few less games, listen to a bit less music, cut out some of your socializing, maybe. There's no one answer here, but you have to look at your lifestyle and see what is conducive to meditation and be mindful of a meditation object and what is not. Because we have choices. It's not always something that someone else is forcing on us or the world is forcing on us. Often it's just our own choice, and we call it going with the flow. And the flow may be just to spend your time looking at a screen rather than putting effort into watching the breath. That's where the choice comes, isn't it? That's where you may need to be more disciplined, make more effort. Sometimes it can be subtle things, just, the weather, your health. Obviously it's harder to practice meditation if you're ill or injured or something, or if the weather is hard. Like today I was outside and I was walking meditation, and it was really windy. So if it's really windy, sometimes it's just too hard to do walking meditation outside, or if it's raining, obviously. But even then, sometimes it's a matter of being determined, isn't it? Like the famous Buddhist nun, the enlightened nun in Thailand, Mechi Gyalp, she used to walk meditation for many hours at night in the rainy season. And people always ask, how did you walk? Because you got no roof over your walking path. She said she'd just put up an umbrella and walk with an umbrella for maybe hours in the middle of the night, but holding an umbrella because she wanted to practice mindfulness. So when you hear about that from other teachers, other practitioners, then you realize in the end, practicing mindfulness, letting go of your depression, anxiety, your worries, your attachments, a lot of it is just up to you, isn't it? It's just whether you're willing to train and practice, or you're willing to follow the flow of your desires, attachments, or negative moods, whatever. There's a lot of choice in this. Even though we often have our excuses ready when someone like me says, did you do your meditation? But it's a matter of choice, isn't it? Whether you really want to train, whether you really want to free your mind from suffering or not. And if someone really wants to do it, they will do it. And the various obstacles are not necessarily insurmountable. It's just about learning how to bring up effort, commit yourself, how to do it. As Ajahn Chah would often say, when it's time to do it, just do it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to bring up the excuses. You just do it. And then you might notice your mind improves. After a little while, you feel better. Your mind clears, perhaps. More mindfulness comes up and you feel better. You don't necessarily have to be a monk or a nun. You can be a layperson. If you commit to the practice, you may get enlightened before the monks and nuns even. In the history of Buddhism, it's not all monks and nuns who become enlightened. Sometimes it's lay people as well. It's that Upasika, the lady in the time of the Buddha. What's her name? Matika Mata. A lay practitioner, 8 precept practitioner, lady who had faith in the Buddha, strong faith in the Buddha, and was following the Buddhist path, had faith in Sangha. And one time there's a group of 60 monks wandering, looking for a good place to meditate. They weren't sure where to kind of settle. In those days, you just wandered from forest to forest between the villages. And they came across a nice forest, and they're wondering, well, is there going to be any support here? Can we actually settle here, maybe spend the rains retreat? And Mata, she came out and saw the monks and got inspired and said, oh, if you stay here, I'll support you. I'll make sure you get enough food, enough robes. We'll make some kutis, some huts for you. You can stay here. I'll make sure it all happens. So the monks thought, oh, this is a good thing. So they settled into that forest, and Matika was true to her word. She made sure Every day, villagers came out to offer food when the monks came into the village on alms round. They built kutis for each monk, simple little huts, probably grass roof bamboo huts in those days. And they started practicing. But because she had such strong faith, she was always thinking, oh, are the monks practicing well? Are the monks comfortable? Do they need anything? And she noticed that when the monks came on alms round, it wasn't the full 60. Oh, she'd just see 1 or 2 monks coming into the village. And they'd never be in a big group. It'd just be 1 monk or 2 monks. They'd just go in one direction, and another monk would go in another direction. So she started to doubt, are the monks getting enough food? And I never see all of them. I only see a few of them. They're always going just alone in one direction or another. So she sent one of her servants, she was a wealthy lady, sent a servant to the area where the monks were camping in the forest and where they had their simple huts. And the servant went and couldn't find anyone. Nobody was there. So the servant comes back and says, I couldn't find any of the monks. So they go again. I think Matika went herself the second time. And they met one monk and they said, why haven't we seen any monks? And they said, well, everyone's in their kuti meditating. They're all diligently doing their meditation. They're not socializing. They're not wasting their time. Each one is in their own place. We only come out when someone rings the bell. So if someone's in trouble, they'll ring a bell, like if they're ill, or if there's a need to talk Dhamma, discuss the Dhamma, we ring a bell. If no one rings a bell, we just stay in our huts and we meditate. And she said, well, why are only a few monks coming into the village for alms round, Bindabat? And the monk said, well, half the monks will stay in their kutis meditating, the other half go out to collect food, but they don't want to socialize. So the Buddha said, don't socialize, waste time talking. So each monk will go in a different direction on their own, collect food, come back and share it with the monks who are staying in the monastery. So she was impressed. She said, oh, this is good. You're practicing noble silence, very restrained, mindful. Do you have enough robes? Yeah. Do you have enough accommodation? Yeah. So everything seemed good. Then she asked them, can they teach her some meditation? Because she'd done a lot of dharma, but she wanted to meditate. And so she asked them, what do you meditate on? She said, we meditate on the 32 parts of the body. You should recite these 32 parts, as we have in the chanting book. If you read our chanting book, Kesa, hair of the head, Loma, hair of the body, Naka, nails, Danta, teeth, Tacho, skin. They taught her the 32 parts of the body and said, focus your mind one by one on each part. Memorize the name, visualize it, concentrate your mind in that way, and move your mind around your body as you go from part to part. This is how we meditate. You can meditate like this too. And Matika, she had a lot of faith, a lot of inspiration. So she went home, she was doing it diligently, many hours a day, focusing on the 32 parts of the body until she could visualize what we call it ukaha nimitta, when the mind becomes calm in samadhi and a nimitta of that body part arises. And she could do this very well for each part of the body. So she got to be very skilled at calming her mind and contemplating each body part. And the monks had told her to contemplate the impermanence of the body, each body part. So like hair of the head, how your hair is impermanent. It grows and then it falls out. Over the years, it will turn white. Eventually, maybe it falls out altogether, stops growing, particularly the men go bald. Same with all the other body parts. Each body part has its own inherent impermanence, subject to change, aging, wearing out all the time. They're also unbeautiful. Body parts all get dirty, greasy, smelly. They don't look so good when you examine them under the lens of mindfulness. So they're unattractive. They're suffering in the sense that ultimately they're a source of disease, aging, and then they don't last forever. We die. They can't bring you lasting, permanent happiness. And they're not self. You can't control your body and tell it not to get old, not to get sick, not to die. You can't really own this body. So she reflected like this. Eventually she became an anagami. She gave up all attachment to the body, saw it completely, very purely, very clearly as impermanent, not self. Gained that insight. So she became an anagami, and with that she gained samadhi and even some psychic powers, the ability to know the minds of other people. So very advanced. Then meditating, because she had these psychic powers arising, she was, again, she's worried about these monks that she's looking after, 60 monks. She thought, oh, I wonder how their practice is going. So she sent her mind out to them. She realized none of them have actually realized the Dhamma yet. None of them have samadhi. They're all practicing diligently, but none have samadhi, none have insight yet. None of them are noble ones yet. So she thought, oh, this is not good. So she went back to see the monks and taught them how to practice mindfulness of the body, because she now was an expert. She had practiced so well, she became an anagami, the third level of enlightenment, before any of the monks. So there's an often quoted story, lay people can meditate and become enlightened before Sangha can. It's not necessarily always the monks know ahead and the lay people follow. Sometimes the lay people learn. So she taught all the monks how to practice, and they all became arahants. So sometimes the lay people can give Dhamma back to the monks, done with respect, done with kindness, compassion. And she had great psychic powers as well. So the monks got enlightened after the rains. They all went back to see the Buddha and said, oh, that was a really good place to practice. Martika looked after us, gave us great support. Actually, I remember another part of the story. One of the reasons these monks hadn't yet got enlightened was because actually the food wasn't really agreeing with them. She was making sure they all got a lot of food, but it wasn't quite the kind of food that agreed with them. So when she looked at their minds and their practice, she realized that, and then she changed the diet for the monks. She told the villagers, you've got to produce more variety of food, and told them different foods to present to the monks. So then that was a cause for the monks to be more comfortable, get more strength, and that's what got them to be enlightened. So anyway, they're all very happy, enlightened. They went back to see the Buddha and said, this is a great place to practice. And there was one other monk he heard, and he went back to that monastery, this newly established monastery, thinking, well, they got enlightened there, maybe I can. So he arrived back in the monastery on his own. All the other monks had left. But his habit, he's a bit of a complainer. So he went to the monastery, said, oh, I'm here on my own. Before there were 60 monks, now it's just me. Who's going to do the cleaning? Who's going to clean the meditation hall? So he straight away went into a bit of negativity. But Martika was around and she knew what he was thinking. So she sent one of her servants out and he said, oh, I'm here to help you clean, don't worry. Then the monk was thinking, oh, I wonder if the food will be good enough here. And Martika read his mind, knew exactly what kind of food agreed with this monk. So she prepared someone. When it was Bindabat, he went out and got exactly the food he liked. So that was good. So she made sure all the conditions were just right for him. So he did eventually become enlightened too. So not only was she became enlightened as well, but she also became a great supporter of the Sangha and knew exactly what the monks needed, which helped them in their practice. There's a good story to remind us that your practice is not really dependent whether you're a monk or a lay person. It's more dependent on whether you're really committed to the practice. So maybe it's time to set aside the excuses. Now we're in the Vasa time, the rains retreat. Whether you're a Sangha or you're a lay person, set aside some of those excuses. Get up in the morning, do some meditation, get to know your meditation object, do some chanting, listen to Dhamma. Or in the evening when you got some time, set aside your business. You've watched enough stuff on online. You've been looking at enough stuff online, whatever it is. Now is the time to do some sitting and walking meditation, chanting, meditation, listening to the Dhamma. All these other things, the socializing, the this, the that. You can set it all aside. You may still have to do a job of work. Okay, you do that, but that's not all day long. Even in your middle of your day, you can do a few minutes meditation if you put your mind to it. There are those lay people who, attain jhana and who attain Margapala Nibbana. But that's about commitment and determination and effort in the practice. And those lay people, they put aside their excuses. They don't let all the things that we usually find as obstacles bother them. They say, no, if I'm a bit tired, never mind, I'll just practice feeling tired. If it's a bit cold, I'll just wrap up and wear warmer clothes or whatever. If there's too much noise around, I'll just focus harder on my meditation object. I won't let this noise distract me. If there's business things to do, well, I'll get my business done, but I'm going to keep mindful and keep the precepts. And when everything's done, then I'm going to do more meditation. In the end, it's about attitude. It's about commitment. It's about attitude. If you really want to get further in your meditation, that's what you have to learn. How to motivate yourself, bring up enthusiasm, set aside the excuses and do it. As Ajahn Chah used to say, just do it. You don't need to talk too much. Listen to a bit of Dhamma, find out what you need to do, and then practice. If you have a question, you ask your question, and then take it away and practice it. So much of the time we are looking for excuses, looking for reasons not to practice. Maybe you have to turn your thinking around and say, well, what are the reasons to practice? What things will help me practice? What is conducive to the practice? And then do it. Ajahn Chah said, when you do it 100%. Not 50%, not 70%, 100%. So you have to ask yourself, today, did I give 100% effort to my meditation, to my practice? No one else can do this for us. In the end, we have to look at our own effort and our own mind and what we're doing and be honest. And if you're only giving 50%, well, ask yourself, how can I improve? Where can I improve in my practice? What more can I do? The other kind of mind states we get into are, how can I get out of doing the practice? How can I get out of my chanting, my meditation? Some people say, I'm going to meditate today and then tomorrow I won't need to do it. So I'll do tomorrow's meditation today. Then I've got a day to do other things. Or they didn't do it today and then tomorrow they say, well, I'll do it tomorrow for today. We're always finding ways to kind of cut corners, shorten the time, do less, reduce the quality, reduce the quantity. That's the way of the world, isn't it? It's like when you do a job and you don't like the job, so you just want to get it over with quickly. If that's the attitude you have when you come to meditate, well, of course, you're probably not going to get very far with your meditation. You have to bring up the attitude, I want to do this 100% for the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, for my parents, for myself, for anyone. You can dedicate your practice to anyone if you want, but you have to do it. So tonight, just giving you a few pointers, guidelines, how to summon up some effort in your practice. Maybe I'll leave the talk there, and afterwards there'll be a chance if any of you have any questions, we'll be able to answer your questions for you.
Andamayang Dhammagataya Sadhu Karang Dadamase Sadhu Sadhu Anumodami. So now we have some time for Dhamma questions and answers. You may type a question in the chat box and send it to Buddha Bodhivana Sangha, or you may also raise your digital hand and ask your question live to Luang Por. So Luang Por, our first question tonight goes, Ajahn has said the Arupa jhanas come out of the fourth jhana. Is it like a ladder, much the same as the first four, or is it like four different paths one can take? Before the Buddha entered Parinibbana, he showed his mastery by ascending and descending the jhanas. But before he died, someone asked the elder Anuruddha where he was. He wasn't in fifth and not in fourth. Where was he?
Well, I can't answer that question because I wasn't there. But yeah, they say, actually, I mean, you hear different things. Sometimes they say went up to fourth, back to first jhana. And he was neither in one or the other because he was not attached to anything. Perhaps he didn't want us to get too attached to the state or the level of jhana. So he's practicing jhana is a practice of relinquishment, and you might say withdrawing from what is coarse, knowledge of the coarse, to more knowledge of the more refined. So the first rupa jhanas are based on physical form, whereas the arupa jhanas, one as if steps back or withdraws from the physical form and takes on ever in more subtle, refined objects. So infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. So neither perception nor non-perception. It's like there's really nothing your mind is settling on other than the fact that you're still aware. You still know you're aware, but you're not really perceiving much at all. But you're not asleep, obviously. It's ever more kind of like stepping back, stepping back, stepping back. But you have to have a starting point that you step back from. So the starting point for the arupa jhanas is the fourth jhana. But nibbana is not the jhanas, but the jhanas are a stepping stone to nibbana, something that helps you refine the awareness, make the mindfulness and the awareness very, very refined of the most subtle states of mind. So it's something that's very helpful, but ultimately it's insight or panya that leads to enlightenment, relinquishing all attachment, even to the jhanas, the rupa jhanas, the arupa jhanas, any of the the most subtlest conceit, mana, that even, let's say, an anagami has. Only an arahant has abandoned that. And they say the mind of an arahant, whether it's the Buddha or a Savaka, an enlightened disciple of the arahant, it just doesn't alight or settle on anything because everything is being penetrated as not self and not to be grasped at as self. So then if that's the state of mind you're experiencing, I assume you would not have anything at all, even a jhana you wouldn't grasp at as self, you wouldn't attach to. You can enter jhana and leave jhana, but you don't grasp at it. So the mind is just completely in a state of non-grasping, non-clinging. Maybe I'll just say that on this very subtle, refined question.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. What's the relationship between the history of the Ramayana and Ramakien? Are the characters real people, Rishinga, for example, or are they just fables that different cultures have borrowed?
Well, like many things that get stories and fables and legends that get handed down over the centuries, you can't help but have a certain amount of embellishment and imagination added in for ease of telling, for interest. But maybe there's a starting point in all of this that was to do with devas and beings, maybe historical beings as well, people, but also devas. But as I said, over the handing these stories down, there's going to be a certain amount of embellishment. It's the same even, with some aspects of the suttas. We have those suttas that we believe are very close to the words of the Buddha. We can't be absolutely sure because we weren't there, but some seem very close to the words of the Buddha and seem to confirm with each other that they are very unembellished, unchanged. And then there's others that seem to be additional texts from maybe later monks or commentators have added on or slightly changed them. That's the fact of life, isn't it? When you hand information down, whether it's verbally or even in writing, over the centuries, over the generations, things can get changed a little bit here, a little bit there. You just have to accept that. So I think what you're pointing out, well, there'll be some of that going on. But maybe there's still plenty you can learn from these stories. There's often, a lot of Dhamma in the Ramayana or the Ramakien. But whether you're interested in that or not is another matter. I mean, if you're just interested in practicing for Margapala Nibbana, you don't necessarily have to read or find out about those stories. But if it helps to inspire you and it holds your interest, well, there's nothing wrong if you like to read them and study them. That's fine. That's your choice.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. I heard a rumor Luang Por Tui is coming to visit one last time. Is this true?
I don't know. You have to ask him, not me. It'd be nice if it's true. I'll try and find out. We'll try and get some information. If he does come to Australia and visits us, if that happened, well, you'll get to hear about it for sure. But I haven't heard anything. And he's very old. How old is he now? 90?
Yeah,
he's about 90. So I'm a bit doubtful about that. But, we live in hope, don't we?
Sadhu. Next question. Not sure who it's referring to, but Luang Ta talked about different levels of sati, sati sampajanya, and mahasati, for example. If one catches the anapanasati sniffles and is doing breath samadhi in all four postures, what level is this?
Not sure anapanasati sniffles is a technical term. I'm not even sure if it means something good or bad. Does that mean you are struggling with your anapanasati because you're sniffling, you have sinus or cold? Or does it mean you actually are doing well and you're constantly with your breath in, breath out? I'm not quite sure what you mean by it, but Luang Ta, I assume you mean Luang Ta Mahabua, talks about different levels of sati. Yes, any teacher will probably mention that there's your initial practice of sati, your mindfulness. So you're cultivating anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath, or reciting Buddha. It's going to be not continuous to begin with. You have moments of mindfulness and you lose your mindfulness. You're with the breath and then you lose that. You're distracted by the five hindrances, and then you regain mindfulness with the breathing and maybe can drop some of the hindrances for a while and then they come back. There's a lot of back and forth between the mind, mindful of its object, reciting Buddha or with the breath or any of the other objects, and then the mind that's caught into the five hindrances. And we call them hindrances for a reason. They hinder you from being mindful. They take your mindfulness away and fill your mind up with desire, anguish, sleepiness, dullness, anxiety, restlessness, doubt, and so on. And so practice is about working through these hindrances, making mindfulness really strong and continuous, making it there all the time. So if you're using mindfulness of breathing as your main object, yes, like you say, bringing the mind to the breath to the point where whether you're standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, maybe you can keep your mind with the breath, or almost all the time with the breath. That might be one goal for someone either on a retreat or in a monastic situation, a situation where they've got a lot of time to really devote to their practice. They could do that or aim for that. It's a matter of your own practice, isn't it? When the mind gathers together, we call that samadhi, but whether it's gathering together, unifying, becomes one-pointed, the hindrances pass away or subside, whether that's just for a few moments, a few minutes, or for many minutes, or for many hours. There are depths to samadhi, or depths, strength. There's a strength of samadhi. So if mindfulness is you're becoming more skilled at keeping the mind, the breath in mind, the hindrances are bothering you less and less because you're skilled at staying with the breath, letting go of hindrances. Your mind gathers together, then it may experience what we call kanika samadhi for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It gathers together, piti, sukha, ekaggata, the factors of jhana arise, but briefly. So it's not yet considered to be jhana or appana samadhi, but it's still an important step in your practice. It also depends on other factors like your body, your physical body, whether you're strong, weak from illness, whether perhaps you've not slept enough, or whether you've eaten too much food or too little food. There'll be a few other factors that may influence it. But there'll be periods, if you keep practicing regularly, where your mind gathers together and the mental energy seems to all come into one place, and mindfulness is continuous. You're not distracted. Your mind is not wandering all over the place anymore. So we call that kanika samadhi. And so if you experience that more and more, well, you probably keep practicing, and there may be times when your mind goes much deeper for much longer, what we call upajjhara samadhi, half an hour, 1 hour, where the mind gathers together, the piti is strong, the sukha is there, the stillness of mind, the one-pointedness. You're not distracted, the hindrances are not bothering you. But if you can still hear sounds, a thought can arise, you can turn to contemplate something. This is what we call upajjhara samadhi. It's not appana or jhana. But if you keep practicing, the mind may go deeper still, and the mindfulness is stronger and more continuous for longer. Get to the point where the mind becomes absolutely still or one-pointed on its object. You might experience first jhana or appana samadhi. So it's about practice. Keep practicing, but if you get to that level, either upajjhara or appana samadhi, like you say, you're experiencing the samadhi, the piti, the sukha, the one-pointedness in all postures, not just when you're sitting and then you stop sitting and it all disappears. You get up from your seat to go and walk meditation or do different activities, the samadhi goes with you, and it can last for days, the piti and sukha. You sleep very little when you attain appana samadhi. Your mind is very awake. So you might sleep enough just to keep your body healthy and rested, but it may be very brief periods and then you're awake again. So these are grades, levels of samadhi that come through practice, but you really have to be dedicated to it. So probably quite hard to attain if you have a normal job, a normal lifestyle, kids to look after and so on like that. On a retreat, you might be able to, or certainly if you go and live in a monastery, if you ordain, you might have more time available to really practice. You just do the best you can. I wouldn't think too much about the levels of samadhi, but just keep observing how strong your mindfulness is, how well you're able to stay with the breath, what hindrances, if they are coming up, what hindrances are bothering you. Because we often have particular weaknesses. We lose our temper. We have all kinds of desire. We have lust. We have worries and anxieties. We fall asleep, We have usually a range of different hindrances bothering us, and it's how well you're working through them and letting them go. And it can be very tedious, repetitive practice. But the ones who attain samadhi are the ones who don't give up. You have to keep going until you can do it. Like anything, you're learning a skill, a certain kind of knowledge, a skill in some aspect of life. Everything takes effort, patient effort, time. Keep going until you can do it. But the rewards of developing the path, particularly sila, samadhi, and impanya, are better than any other reward, any worldly reward. So I would say it's the best activity to put your effort into, rather than just making money or learning a sport or playing an instrument or something. I would say this is the best way to devote your time and energy. But everyone's different, aren't they?
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Luang Por, please excuse the question, but what should we do if lust arises whilst meditating, e.g. when doing metta meditation? It seems like lust and piti, sukha have some similarities in the feeling tone. Please advise. Thank you so very much.
Very much. So I think everyone will have to experience this to some extent, because everyone has lust. You wouldn't be born as a human being if you didn't have lust. You're born into the world because of your previous lust from a previous life. What is lust? Well, it's very much connected to attachment to this body, identifying with the body as me, myself. All the physical feelings of lust are very strong, the pleasures we have with this body. Everyone has that, whether they recognize it or not. It's just normal part of a human existence. So getting to know what stimulates it, what we call ayoniso manasikara, unwise attention, will stimulate lust. So going to memories and fantasies of objects that stimulate lust, so images of people and maybe people you've known in the past, people you've met, or just creating them out of nothing, whatever. We do that. We go unwisely to the object and then we develop that object with lust. We enjoy it. Could be just for a few moments, could be for many minutes, a long time. Sometimes it's an external stimulus. You see something that sets off your lust. You meet somebody, some situation sets lust off. You see something online, whatever. That's why we practice sila. Sila is partly to limit the stimulation in terms of lust. So you might keep 8 precepts or 5 precepts. So you start cutting off inappropriate attention, looking at other women. If you're a man, looking at other women. If you're a woman, looking at other men, thinking about them, looking at them, indulging in them, whether it's online or in person, say. Sila helps you to be more disciplined and start cutting off and simplifying your life. Internally, you have to do it with mindfulness, patience, and awareness and insight, clear comprehension. Stop going to those memories, stop fantasizing. Take some, what we call nekama, renunciation. You have to say, no, I'm not going to think about that. No, I'm going to let it go. In the first instance, that's what you do. You develop nekama, sila, and sense restraint. As you develop your practice, you need to develop mindfulness and insight and methods of insight that will help you deal with lust when it arises. So you have an image, instead of developing that image in a way that stimulates you to get pleasure and attract you, you might look at the unattractive side of that image. So even in your mind, you can develop a super images, and you look at the parts of the body that are not attractive. You remind yourself of them, you focus your mind on them. If you're looking externally at a person or a picture, and look for the unattractive side, remind yourself of that. Even the most beautiful body gets smelly, gets dirty over time. That's why we need to wash. The things associated with the body, the clothes, the decorations get dirty, need to be washed. That's what bodies are. They're a source of dirt, grease, all kinds of liquids and solids come out of this body, and then pretty much all pretty unpleasant stuff. And we try and get rid of them as quick as we can because we don't like them. We're always looking for the attractive and moving away from the unattractive. But as a meditation, you're now directing your mind to consider the unattractive, to balance up your thinking, to develop the perception of the unattractive, so you're familiar with that. Then when lust arises, you can go to that perception. So instead of looking for what you like, you look at what you don't like, and that's the truth of the human body, that it can be attractive, sure, but there's also unattractive. And we tend to ignore that. You mentioned metta meditation. Yeah, this is one of the dangers of metta meditation, is you're wishing people well, you're bringing up a warm, relaxed feeling, good feeling, and then you direct that feeling and that thought to someone. Well, that someone could stimulate lust for you very quickly. If it's the opposite sex or it's somebody you like, the metta may be there for a moment and then it crumbles and just turns into lust. I like them, and you end up falling in love with the person you were just wishing them well, and then you fall in love with them. So there's a danger there. So as a monk, you're always taught, don't spread metta or dwell on images of females, because you'll end up falling in love with them until your insight is very strong, and that may be, when you're at an advanced stage in your practice. You don't want to dwell too much on females if you're a male, or males if you're a female. So you have to be careful, you have to be restrained and use wisdom and insight to guide your metta practice. And like you say, with metta, you get a lot of very comfortable, pleasant feelings, which is what you're wishing for yourself or others. But for some people, that just triggers lust. So you have to be very careful. You have to keep mindful, keep aware of what you're doing, what's leading to what, cause and effect. They always say, the monk in the forest has to be very careful if a female deva comes to see them, because female devas bring with them a lot of piti and sukha, and they're very beautiful. And in the history of Buddhism, many monks have fallen in love with devas, and you have to be very careful to keep restrained equanimous, not to get attached to a female deity, a female deva, because it can stimulate lust. And in the same way, female humans. So one has to be on guard, practice restraint, precepts, restraint, develop mindfulness, clear comprehension, and then the practice of a supa, focusing on the unattractiveness of the body, to the point where ultimately that is clear to the mind, and you maybe develop a supa nimittas that you can keep in your mind, or may quite naturally be arising. When your mind is very peaceful and you're doing this contemplation, you could be looking at someone very attractive and they turn into a corpse before your very eyes. They turn into a skeleton before your very eyes. When the insight and mindfulness is strong, continuous, that can happen quite naturally without you even making it happen. It just happens. But sometimes in the lead up to that, you practice it. So you have to make it happen for yourself. You have to focus your mind on the image of the unattractive body part, or seeing the person as a corpse, or yourself as a corpse. Practice it until you're good at it. So good luck. It's not an easy practice. It's not a very popular practice, but it is part of the path. You can't really avoid it. So just work up to it.
Sarungu. Another question. Dear Luang Por, I have been practicing metta meditation regularly, but I notice that I still experience frustration and anger at times. May I seek your advice on how I can improve my practice? Thank you, Luang Por.
Keep going. Don't give up. Everyone's the same. Before you can let go of anger, you have to see it, notice it. And as you're noticing it, you'll notice there's sometimes strong anger, sometimes just very quick, fleeting moments of irritation, anger, small bursts of anger, and so on. So you're not going to let it go all in one go. It's quite an advanced thing to completely give up your attachment to anger and the roots of anger. But you keep working at it, keep going. And usually, if you meditate regularly, you'll get to see there's a certain patterns how anger arises. So you see, as I was saying earlier, with unwise attention, you are looking at something that stimulates anger, something you already have a perception you don't like, you don't want. So you're seeing, and then you get a feeling, an unpleasant feeling, a feeling of tension. It can be brief, can be extreme, long-lasting, but a feeling of tension or pain. And then you get negative thinking, and then perception is reinforced. That can be through seeing or hearing the words or the sound that you don't like. Taste, smell, touch, and then memories of all the previous sense contact and previous perceptions that we've already stored up in our mind. So you think of something you don't like, you get angry. You remember somebody that hurt you or did something you didn't like, you get angry. So just memory can do it as well. But when anger is arising, there's unwise attention, thinking unwisely, unmindfully of something, or turning your attention to it, whether it's external or internal. Then the feeling of tension, and then trains of thought, more perceptions, more detailed sort of stories come up. And if you're not establishing mindfulness and insight, well, it'll carry on, won't it? And it often reinforces itself. It'll come up quicker, more often, more stronger. So one of the hardest things is when you get anger arising, you get a little explosion out from your heart of tension, pain, sometimes a big one, and it's fast. But if you practice a lot of meditation, maybe you can keep in touch with that before you even start going to the perceptions and the thoughts. You're just mindful of the feeling, a painful feeling. Say somebody pricks you with a needle, getting a jab, and you don't like it. You start to get the feeling of tension, but you keep it there. You don't blame the person who's giving you the jab. You don't think all the negative thoughts. You just practice patience, mindfulness with the feeling, and then the feeling subsides. It will be you see something that sets off the feeling, but then you let it subside because you're mindful and you reflect. I don't want to get angry. I acknowledge this feeling arising, old karma. Now I'll let it go. It's temporary, it's impermanent. I'll let it go. You get better, quicker at doing that. So it may be quite natural for you to establish mindfulness every time you notice some tension in the mind or physical tension, pain. And rather than attaching to it and letting it create anger, you let the anger subside, the feeling subside. So it's about practice. Keep doing it, and you get better at it. You get sharper, quicker. You can jump in there quicker rather than just dwelling on the thing that made you angry and those thoughts and that mood over and over again, back and forth. That's how when we start practicing, it's like that. But if you keep practicing, you don't dwell so much on it because you know it's suffering. You're looking for ways to let it go. And you cultivate more metta and compassion to balance it. And that will also stop anger arising in the first place.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, can someone who had depression be able to meditate?
Depends how extreme the depression is, how long they've had it, how extreme it is. As I was saying in the talk, like sometimes it's a medical condition that needs a lot of treatment, a lot of help, counseling, medication. They may or may not be able to come out of it. But then there's also another level of depression that you might say is more ordinary, that everyone experiences sometime or other. We have moments when we're depressed, and sometimes it becomes deeper, but it's still manageable and maybe can be improved. The situation can be improved through meditation and mindfulness practice. So sometimes mindfulness and meditation will help, but sometimes we expect too much from the person that, we think, oh, just go and meditate and your depression will subside, you'll become mindful and let it go. Well, perhaps it's too advanced for that. They're not ready for meditation. Some people, they need to look more at things like lifestyle. Maybe they need to make lifestyle changes because there may be certain things prompting the depression. They may need a lot of advice, counseling, help as well. They may need to look into doing things that make them feel more relaxed and give some meaning to their lives, so things like charity, volunteering, helping others in very simple ways or more complex ways, just depends on the person and the situation. I'm not really an expert on depression, but this is what I've learned from being a monk, teaching people with depression, that sometimes there are fairly simple things, changes they can make in their lifestyle, like giving up alcohol and drugs is a very common one that can improve things quickly. But that's also hard to do, isn't it? But it can help. Changing lifestyle, changing relationships. If you're in an abusive relationship or something, maybe that needs to be addressed and changed. Obviously, a lot of people are carrying trauma and bad memories from the past, PTSD, various previous abuses and things that may again need a lot of help, advice, but also developing some good, wholesome activities to help the person develop more happiness in the things they're doing. And then some people are just very depressed, clinically depressed, need healthcare from healthcare professionals. Just telling them to meditate is not going to work. It's not enough. So it depends on the person and the situation. Yes, it can help, but sometimes they need much more than just meditation. And occasionally meditation is the wrong thing to do. They're not ready for it. So it depends on the person.
Sadhu. We have another question here. Thank you, Ajahn, for the encouraging talk. It is very timely as I feel my vasa determinations wavering, and I'm struggling to keep my wholesome habits going. May I know what is the best way to stop beating myself up and negativities when I feel like I'm not reaching the expectations I set for myself? Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, well, just being angry with yourself is not going to probably achieve very much other than make you miserable. Go to look at the causes, some of which I was talking about tonight. Make your plan. When are you going to meditate? When are you going to listen to the Dhamma? How can you introduce Dhamma into daily life? Keeping precepts, being more mindful in your work and the things you do. Try to focus more on the parts of the practice you need to develop or keep up if they're wavering, rather than just blaming yourself. We all know we've got weaknesses. We all know we've got mental defilements affecting us. There's no need to get too upset about all that. That's not going to help you. Better to go to the more positive stuff. What do I need to do to improve? What do I need to develop? What do I need to keep up? Sometimes we need to re-establish resolutions, determinations that we've made before, perhaps, and get back to them. Sometimes we need to change lifestyle, how we spend our time, what we're doing. Sometimes we need to sit down and talk to ourselves, remind ourselves why we practice, what the benefits are, and then, of course, listening to Dhamma and getting inputs from Kalyana Mitta, that can help as well. So just, beating yourself up probably is not going to help very much. But yeah, occasionally it's the right thing to do. If you're lying in bed in the morning lazy and you could get up and do half an hour meditation before you go to work, but you're just lying there saying, I can't be bothered. Well, yeah, sometimes you need to kick yourself up the backside and say, get out of it, maybe. But not as a sort of mental habit, always looking down on yourself and blaming yourself. It becomes like a mental habit that's no use to you or anyone. But occasionally give yourself a bit of a boot up the backside. Yeah, that may be useful, may be helpful. Tell yourself to stop doing, if you've got a bad habit, too indulgent in something, tell yourself to stop. Sometimes you have to be a bit harder on yourself with the rules, the precepts. That can be the right thing to do sometimes. If you've got a really bad habit you're trying to kick, sometimes you just have to say to yourself, I would rather die than have another drink or another cigarette, or I'd rather die than watch more porn, or I'd rather die than gamble, or I'd rather die than just spend another morning lying in bed rather than getting up and meditating. Sometimes you make a really strong determination, I'd rather die than. Sometimes that is correct. Do that and see if it helps. Good. It just makes you more depressed. Okay, stop doing that. You need a new approach. You have to see what works for you.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question here. Dear Luang Por, I've heard a teacher say the only reason we fall into lust is because we are not happy, and to do metta instead of asubha. What do you think about this? Thank you.
Well, sometimes that's correct, yeah. It's just hard to generalize, isn't it? It depends on the person, where they're at in their practice. The danger with asubha, contemplating the unattractiveness of the body, is it can make you feel miserable if you're not ready for it or you're not doing it in a balanced way. You can get irritable, miserable, take it out on other people, you become grumpy with other people and so on, because you're kind of cutting off where there's a lot of personal investment in happiness. Most people see lust as a source of happiness. So if you cut that off, it's like, I've lost my happiness. So they become grumpy. So you've got to balance that. You've got to get some happiness, wholesome happiness from somewhere else. So sometimes metta is a good balance. Practicing kindness in different ways, generosity in different ways, things that bring out a sense of well-being to balance the sense of loss when you're practicing renunciation and asubha. Really, the best antidote is samadhi. So you develop samadhi whatever way you can, whether it's anapanasati, metta, recollecting the Buddha. As samadhi comes up, you get a sense of well-being, piti and sukha arise. So then when you turn to contemplate the body, you can cope with it better. It doesn't necessarily make you grumpy. It's like, it sobers you up. So it doesn't make you like ecstatically happy necessarily, but it helps you see the way things are. And that brings peace. If you're practicing asubha meditation correctly, it will make you peaceful. And of course, when you're peaceful, you're not grumpy, you're not unhappy. But to get to that point where you're peaceful from asubha, you may have to do other things first to make you peaceful and ready to practice asubha. So many people will develop generosity, keep precepts, meditate on the breath, on loving kindness, on other things first, and then later they go to asubha. Step-by-step process. That's probably the more common approach, I would say. So if you find you're trying asubha and you're miserable, or if you fall into lust easily, you want to find something else that will balance that. So a meditation object that you're satisfied to be with, experiment, whether it's the breath, or someone was saying yesterday that they reflect on death, and that brings them a sense of contentment and peace. So if it works, do it. And then you will fall into lust less, and then you're maybe ready to do a super and deal with your lust. So you need to find sources of wholesome happiness that will counter both the lust and also prepare you for the investigation of the unattractiveness of the body. There are few people who do it as their main meditation object from day one, a super meditation from day one, and they get good results. It makes them very peaceful very quickly. But I would say they're a minority. The majority of people need to do a step-by-step process, so they're developing other kinds of happiness, which both counter the lust and also allow them a platform to investigate your super.
Sadhu Luang Por. Are there any further questions?
Well, it's been a long session tonight, I know, so I appreciate your attention and joining in tonight. Because it's the Buddhist holy day, we did a session with meditation, chanting, and the talk. So I hope it's been useful for you, and we'll see you again next time.
Sadhu.
So we'll pay respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha now, and you're welcome to join in with the Sangha as we do this.
Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namatami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Saṅghang Namami. Saṅgho, our respects to Luang Por. And may people welcome to pay respects. Wow.